What's good, everybody? Takeshita back here with another wrestling review. Today we're going to do our last monthly top 10 of 2025 with our December top 10. Also, I rated every match in the C2, so I'm going to go over that quickly. I'll have some spoilers for the top 10 here because some of these obviously are going to make the cut. But let's just look at this wrestler-wise and table-wise here. At a glance, I won't go over every match here. So we look at the table. You'll notice across the board there's 3 different matches here that have 4 stars or above. So those will be in the top 10. There's a couple 3.75s, I think, that are honorable mentions. So I was going to talk about those quickly, just kind of give an overview of the tournament overall. Overall, I wasn't super jazzed on the C2 this year. I do think the work rate's a little overrated overall, but it's not bad by any means. It is some of the strongest TV wrestling in AEW, which means it's some of the strongest TV wrestling in the world. And in that sense, it is a really strong tournament. I just think the work rate's not quite up to par with the G1. I don't think it's on that level. I haven't really dipped my toes in too many of the other Joshi tournaments. I did watch all of King of Gate this year, and it's a little better than King of Gate, but I wouldn't say significantly better than King of Gate. But my highest rated match in King of Gate was 4 stars. This one had 2 4.25s, and 1 4. I think we had maybe 3 3.25s, and in King of Gate I had like 2. So obviously better overall, but with the higher quality of workers, more frequency of it, like some of the guys in King of Gate, a single elimination tournament, only get 1 match, where here everyone got at least 5. So, like, worst case scenario, we're getting 5 PAC matches, 5 Kyle Fletcher matches, 5 Cassidy matches, Takeshita matches. So the quality should be higher, and I just think it was a little bit higher overall, which I think was disappointing. So you can see the ratings of everyone here at a glance. Worst performer I thought was Claudio Castagnoli until the final. I was not a fan of the final match, which bumped Okada just below him. I think this might be Okada's last C2. He's just not going to turn it on every TV match. You know, he really mails it in for some of these. I don't think he necessarily mailed it in the PAC match. It just didn't flow with 2 heels firmly working heel at that point. He totally mailed it in against Kevin Knight. I thought he mailed it in against Moxley. I believe Markeem on the Blue Moon podcast said he was just working like that slow Okada style, which is slightly different, but he's just not bringing it full octane very often. So I think expecting him to do 5 matches in 5 weeks, plus the semis and finals, I can't imagine Okada ever going out in the group stage. It's just not a great fit for what he does in that time frame. The G1, when you think about it, the G1's over like a month span. So even if he's putting on this kind of work rate, you're getting more matches, getting more opportunity for the greatness to shine through. And that's really what Okada is. Okada's not a high baseline worker, I think, necessarily, especially at this point in his career, despite being one of the best in the world. But when he's on, he's up there with everyone that is the best in the world. So I don't think this does him really any favors. I'm probably lower on average than most people that watch and rated all of the C2. I think if you kind of average out our scores, whether you say I rate too low or other people rate too high, I think on average, we generally end up here in the same position. I was a lot lower on Claudio than a lot of people. I just didn't think his work was very exciting at all this year. And I think that's more of a reflection of his status in AEW, how he's kind of came in, and from day one, he hasn't elevated or decreased in his spot. He plays the same role every year, plays the same role every year in all 3 C2s so far. I think the tournament can benefit from him not being in it as well. Not that he doesn't bring it, but I just think he's incredibly stale in AEW, and it really shined through in this tournament. On the flip side, the positives, Kyle Fletcher capped off a tremendous 2025, but having the best C2 run, I think, out of anyone. Not far behind him was Speedball. And I think if the company was behind Speedball in the same way Fletcher was, I think Speedball probably does have the best tournament. But this is just kind of his role. This is his role he plays in every company, so it's not a knock on him in any way, but he's just kind of the mid-card workhorse guy. Kevin Knight impressed me. I'm not as high on Kevin Knight as a lot of people. I thought his match with Darby was excellent, and I thought he showed up pretty well for the most part in all his other matches. Not quite reaching that level he did with Darby. Overall, very solid. I thought this was a really nice tournament for Jack Perry to kind of come into, even though he didn't top 3.5 in any of his matches. I think being able to be that underdog babyface really highlighted that he's much better than his heel work was, because his heel work was pretty bad, especially towards the end of the run. I thought the veterans kind of under-delivered for the most part here. Moxley, with me not watching AEW TV closely, I think a lot of the story beats I missed, especially because it seemed like such a strong pivot from what he was doing against Kyle O'Reilly at the pay-per-view the week before this started. But in hindsight, I think they did tell a pretty cohesive story, with Moxley kind of recognizing the error in his ways and cheating and not just sort of willing his way through it, which, thinking about all, 7 matches he had, I think they did tell that story pretty well. Moxley did end up winning the C2, which shocked me at first. I still think it's a bit of a cop-out. Not something I normally do in these review videos, but I did want to talk about the philosophy on this because I've thought about it a lot. I think we're reaching a real problem with Tony Khan just throwing belts at problems. So I believe what happened here, if you listen to some of the sources that do pretty good sourcing on wrestling, is the plan's been set in motion for a long time for MJF to win the world title. I think Social Suplex said they made those plans in early August for him to win it at this event. And Tony was scared to have MJF take the belt off Hangman and didn't want him to get the bad heat, which is why we had the Joe transition. And I think he was surprised by how negative the response from the fan base was with that. So I think the Moxley win here was another pivot. Obviously, we're building towards a Takeshita Okada face-off, and they copped out in the semifinal here with a dirty win with the screwdriver. Though it told a good story, I think, over the course of the two matches. Getting off course here, but I think the reason I rated this final so low, if you watch my World's End review, is I watched this out of order. I was about an hour and a half late to watching this pay-per-view, watched it live, and then caught the rest at the end. So I think had I watched both semifinals and understood the story they were telling, the final would have hit a little better for me. I gave this final 2 1/4 because I was just very bored by it. But in hindsight, knowing the story they told in the 2 semifinal matches, I think made the story of Moxley's kind of babyface overcoming make more sense. Regardless, now I got to remember where I was prior to that. Oh, with Moxley winning the belt, I think Takeshita and Okada were always supposed to fight over the unified belt, and the storyline of them meeting in the finals of this tournament, Takeshita beating Okada for the belt, made the most sense. But with the negative reaction to Joe winning the belt, it leaking that MJF was going to win the belt, and a lot of the negative reaction to that, I think Tony was a little nervous about just going full steam ahead with running all heel champions again. I guess Takeshita would technically be a face champion, although they slow played his face turn here with Moxley doing it as well. So he ununified the belts, which I think is really clunky, especially after introducing the national title that has the same gimmick as the international title does. So Moxley could have a belt that's kind of the 1A to the world champion. We'll have a fighting babyface champion that's 1A to MJF's heel world champion. And then he doesn't have to pivot off the Takeshita Okada feud. It'll just be over the international title instead of the unified title. But I just think it's a really big cop-out, and I think people can kind of see the cop-outs with Tony's booking. He's very clearly, as an owner, doesn't want to be the hard ass and kind of put his foot down. So he famously made Collision for CM Punk. So CM Punk and the Young Bucks could be separated instead of squashing that beef. We've seen him kind of throw titles at other people in attempts to keep them happy. And I think he's kind of doing something similar here where he doesn't want to tell anyone they're not winning the title, especially when they've been promised or, slow built to the title. So we're just making more and more titles to kind of try to alleviate the problem. And I don't think it really works. I think it unlegitimizes a lot of the belts and makes everything just feel like it's not important. We got 5 men's singles titles right now. And it's hard to order them. I guess technically the Continental titles is kind of like the number 2. But the number 2 has changed over the years so many times. It's kind of hard to tier them. Ricochet's belt seems to be at the bottom of the totem pole, and the world title is obviously at the top. Everything else is just kind of commingled and hard to say. But that's enough on the Continental Classic and the C2. Let's move on to the December top 10, which is what we came here for. I had 9 matches that I had 4 stars and higher. I think I had 7 matches in total that were 3 3/4. So one of those is going to be number 10. The rest will be honorable mentions. I said I was going to talk about these matches. I didn't. So let's run through the C2 matches real fast. I had Kyle Fletcher and PAC. I thought this was really good. PAC was working a little bit more babyface in this match. I can't remember if this match was in England or Wales or not. I want to say it was one of those two, which is why they had PAC lean face a little bit more than he was early in the run. I think teasing the Death Riders going face, or at least tweener, played into this as well as the tournament went on. I think Moxley leaned into it a little bit more. I think PAC subtly did. I don't really recall if Claudio did or not, but I think they were much more heel heavy at the beginning of the tournament and they eased off it as the tournament went. So you got kind of more of the classic PAC in this match, which I think fits Kyle Fletcher a lot more. Very fun overall. Like I said, these are all going to be 3 3/4. Jon Moxley and Orange Cassidy met on the final day in a winner-go-home match of the group stage of the C2. This wasn't as good as their full gear match. I think they had 2 full gear matches, actually, 23 and 24. So this is second year anniversary of that first one, I guess, in a way. Weakest of the 3, but these 2 have good chemistry. They know how to tell a good story. Like I said, with Moxley's journey here, this was his kind of fight through the pain to scratch and claw his way into the knockout stages of the tournament. Good stuff here. I also had Takeshita and Moxley from earlier in the tournament at 3 3/4 here as well. That one's a little further back. I didn't take notes, so I can't remember too much of it. I think it was more hard-hitting. Again, the story was kind of the Death Riders weren't able to cheat with the C2 rules, so Moxley had to really kind of grit it out. This was his second match of the tournament, I believe. He beat Dorada. Yeah, that's right. He beat Dorada first, and then his second match was against Takeshita here. So much stiffer competition in the IWGP champion. Moxley couldn't quite overcome. He was relearning how to, not to cheat his way through and have to grit his way through. And he wasn't prepared for Takeshita at that time. But they told a pretty good story here. You have 2 of the best workers in the world going at it. That always gives you a pretty high floor. That looks like all the C2 matches from Dream Queendom, Stardom's year-end show. I had Natsupoi against Sareee. I thought this was really good. Sareee is one of my favorites in the world. I thought she had one of the strongest 2025s, if not the strongest, from an in-ring perspective. Natsupoi, I know, is a lot of Stardom fans view in high regard. I have not really caught her on a night that I'm really impressed with her. This was more of the same here. I just think their clash of styles didn't really work for me because Sareee is so stiff and so violent, and not a lot of Joshis can reach that level of intensity with her. It felt like 2 different sports in a lot of the ways, which kept me from getting super engaged with it. Obviously, the talent's there with both women, even as someone not super high on Poi. The talent shines through. I'm a little harsher on Joshi than a lot of people. It doesn't quite jive with what I like in wrestling, but still very 2 skilled women doing the best of their shit here on Stardom's, I believe, second biggest show of the year. Sareee has a lot of great stuff this year, so it's hard to recommend this, but a lot of people are much higher on this match, so I would say out of everything I've talked about so far, this would be the highest recommended viewing. Until this match here, King of Gate semifinal match, Riiita versus Gianni Valetta. I seem to be higher on this match than a lot of people, but I thought this was like the quintessential David versus Goliath match here. I thought Valetta really brought it, which surprised me. He had an incredible run in King of Gate, which we'll talk about a little bit later, because he's my number 10 match as well. Putting together some of the best work here. Riiita, being as small as he is, being the little prince, I think he works well against big guys, being that David role. He was able to hit all his lucha stuff here. Valetta was a much better lucha base than I've ever seen him be, so I thought a lot of the stuff came off much crisper than I was expecting. Ultimately, there's kind of a ceiling on a Valetta match. Riiita got as much of this out of him as he could. I thought on the King of Gate semis and final show on the 3rd of December, this was the best match of the 3. Just awesome stuff. 3 3/4, obviously. Then the final honorable mention, you had Darby Allin and Gabe Kidd from AEW's World End pay-per-view. I'm still a bit dubious on Gabe's transition to American Pro Wrestling. His size, I'm worried about translating overall, but I think Darby is the perfect guy to hide that. And I think Tony Khan's done a pretty good job of putting Gabe in there with people that are smaller than him, so you don't notice his lack of height and his bulk in the States versus in Japan. Darby does what he does best here. Ragdoll took crazy spots. Your typical Darby Allin match, especially on pay-per-view, has a very high floor because Darby will absolutely get himself destroyed. I think a lot of stuff didn't really click in this match. It drifted into the moves and just doing shit territory instead of really telling a story. I think one of the things that highlighted this is both these guys got busted open. The cohesion of those spots I didn't think was great. I know Gabe got dropped toe-hold into the stairs or something. I can't remember what Darby's was, but they both just kind of felt like unearned spots. I think before they came up after gigging, and then really after gigging, it was just kind of like, what are we doing? High quality work. They beat the shit out of each other. It was very fun. I just don't think it was very cohesive. So I didn't go great on this. I went just under at 3 3/4. All right, so moving into the top 10, the number 10 match here I had was Gianni Valetta taking on Madouka Kikuta for the Open the Dream Gate belt on the December 16th Korakuen Hall show from Dragon Gate. This match probably isn't as good as some of those 3 3/4 matches, but I wanted to give it a little extra love here because this is the best match I've ever seen of Gianni Valetta, and I think this was the best match of Kikuta's Dream Gate reign. I thought they really worked their asses off and did a great job doing the Haas versus Haas thing here, which isn't typical from the Dragon Gate style. So very fun stuff here. Kikuta worked a little bit of the underdog here because Valetta is the biggest and baddest in Dragon Gate. He's the top monster. So Kikuta in his monster title run here had to work from underneath, which was a fun dynamic. And I think it allowed him to highlight his skill set more. I don't think this title run has really worked all that great for Kikuta because he's trying to be the like monster heel, which isn't really his ring style. He has the moves like the hip attack that feel like legitimate knockout blows, especially when he hits it just right. But as a monster, I think he's working a little bit too slow and a little bit too plodding, which takes away from the fun of him. And he had to kind of throw all that to the side here against Valetta and work as the smaller guy. I'm not sure when Valetta got the news that he was winning King of Gate and challenging for the belt here, but he really turned it on. He was clearly on the juice, so he was in the best shape I've ever seen him in, and he worked his ass off throughout the whole tournament here. I didn't see his previous Dreamgate title matches. I think he wrestled Monte when Monte was Dreamgate champion, and it sounded like it was a real bomb of a match. So he made sure to turn that around. Kikuta also, first Dreamgate run isn't very well regarded. I don't think this one's going all that well either. I didn't see the first one, so I can't say it's worse. It seems like it's better by all accounts. But this was a make-right for both these guys, I think, and I think they knocked it out of the park here. 3 3/4 here. Not quite great, but very fun stuff. Coming in at number 9, you had, from that same show, the 16th Korakuen for Dragon Gate, you had the Triangle Gate Tournament decider match here between Natural Vibes and Love and Peace. So Amare, after having an incredible rookie season, hurt his shoulder after winning the Triangle Gate. I believe they won the Triangle Gate match. He did his first King of Gate match. I'm not sure he really got hurt in either of those matches. He was wearing the shoulder tape prior to that, but I think it just got untenable. So he had to vacate the belt, and rather than just doing a decision match, what Dragon Gate did is they ran a mini tournament. Speaking of the Continental Classic and tournaments that we talked about earlier in this video, they ran a mini tournament here with, I believe, 5 trios. Every faction other than Saipatra put a trio in the tournament. 2 points for a win, 1 point for a draw. And it came down to the final match here with Vibes and Love and Peace. This was the best match of the tournament, I thought, bar none. I think this match went to a draw. Now I'm blanking on it. Yeah, this match went to a draw because we ended up with a 3-way. Gaja del Coro's trio had already qualified. These guys both came in, I believe, with 4 points. So this was the deciding match. And they did a very classic Dragon Gate trope of 6 guys just going full throttle, in 6th gear the whole match here. A very long sprint, very little lulls in this match. The tension still built up, even though they were working from a high speed at Jump Street, and it was awesome. I'm blanking on it because Dragon Gate put on a better trios match, which we'll get to later in the list here. So I'm not remembering a lot of the details here involving Love and Peace as well. But I thought this was 4 stars. This was very fun. Coming in at number 4 was Konami taking on Iida from Stardom Grand Queendom. This was for the white belt, I believe. I haven't quite learned the Stardom titles yet. And they all sound very similar, which I know is probably the case with a lot of people with the Dragon Gate belts as well. I think I've mixed those up on this video before. Very strong December from Iida. She's going to appear on this list for a second time here later on. Traditionally, she's been a tag team worker. I'm not sure. I'm not up to date on the Stardom storylines. I haven't really followed Stardom in that sense. But she's clearly transitioned into the singles run here, at least for this month, if not more long term. And I think she's transitioned to it very well. I know I've seen Konami before. I can't really remember from where, but I thought they worked very well here. Iida, obviously very strong, like powerhouse, but very small. So Konami was the bigger wrestler here. He was working from underneath a lot, which I thought was a fun dynamic because Iida doesn't work the traditional like small wrestler, cruiserweight, high flying style. She still had to do her explosion and stuff to come out on top here, or not come out on top, but get the momentum back and all that. You had fun submission sequences, fun striking sequences. They had pretty good chemistry here. it didn't flow cohesively, which is the complaint I've had for a lot of these matches here. This fell victim to that as well, but I think overall it shined through a little bit better, and everything flowed a little bit better, but I went over the top there and gave it the 4-star rating. Coming in at number 7 was Saya Kamitani, defending the red belt against Soari Anou, also from Dream Queendom here. Kamitani caps her great year where she won Tokyo Sports MVP. Clearly the women's MVP of the world, I think, overall. Turned Stardom's business around here. And I think while she's not the strongest worker in Stardom, she is a very talented woman and can pull out great matches here, as she did here. This played off the Tom Nakato match from earlier in the year a lot. Someone not familiar with Tom all that well, and the story beats here. A lot of the highlight spots didn't work for me in the sense of knowing the nostalgia and reason they're happening, but I think they fit into the general story of this match very well, which was fun. So, I didn't have the over-the-top emotional attachment to this match that a lot of Stardom fans had, but the work was very solid. We had some fun crowd brawling. Kamitani's offense is very fun. I enjoy it a lot. It was a bit weird with this match with Wrestle Kingdom right around the corner to think Kamitani was going to lose this. So I think that took away from the drama of the match a little bit that the Konami Iida match did have, where it felt like either person could win. You never really felt like Anou could win this match. I still went 4 stars on this. I thought this was great. Definitely worth checking out. Coming in at number 6 was the Wondom of Stardom number 1 contender title match from the December 8th Stardom show, Saya Iida versus Emi Sareee. Obviously, based on the match at number 7, you know who wins this match. I thought this match was very fun. This was my favorite Stardom match of the month. I thought Sourei and Iida could just work a little bit more explosive and different style than the Konami. You didn't have the hate factor lingering over it, even though there wasn't really any interference in the Dream Queendom match. I wasn't familiar with Sourei at all, so those matches kind of excite me when I'm seeing someone for the first time. And I thought the explosion and the striking and everything was just a little bit more fun in this match. Nothing too different. I have 2 Saya Iida singles matches when she's a tag specialist, so there's a lot of overlap between these 2 matches. I thought this one was just a little bit more fun overall. 4 stars on this as well. And our run on women's matches continues here as the number 5 match was the Ring of Honor television title match from Final Battle, Mercedes Mone defending against Red Velvet. I thought this was a career-defining performance here from Velvet, and Mercedes' best carry job of the year. I think it was very clear that Mercedes was carrying Velvet here, to the point that I think it was a little bit detrimental. Mercedes was so focused on making everything Velvet did look very dynamic and impactful, but I think she was lacking a lot of focus in her offense. So her offense wasn't coming through quite the same way. And maybe that was by choice to make Red seem like a legitimate contender here and not a fluke win, even though this did end with a roll-up. It was just very impressive. I think this was Mercedes Mone's most impressive performance of the year, to get this out of Red Velvet, to make this a 4-star match, to make everything Red Velvet did look great, and make it not feel like a fluke or a cop-out that she won this match. It felt like Red deserved this title at the end of the match, and that is an incredible job for Mercedes Mone. I think not quite the carry job of FTR against the Outrunners earlier in this year, but in that same vein of performance. This was one of the caps here. Mone had, 2 big AEW matches to end out the year that I didn't think were quite as good, with the world's title tag match and dropping the belt to Willow on New Year's Eve. This was by far her best match. I think it's kind of a bummer that this was on ROH rather than AEW, where more people could have seen it, because I think this was one of her defining performances of the year. Coming in at number 3, you had the Continental Classic semifinal match between Kyle Fletcher and Jon Moxley from A World's End. I'm seeing a lot of buzz of this being the match of the year, at least the match of the year contender. I'm not quite as high on that. A lot of people went 5 here. I went 4.25. I thought this match was awesome. Obviously, it's one of my top 50 matches of the year. I don't remember quite where I had it ranked. Somewhere in the mid-40s. But very, very good stuff. I thought this was Moxley's best performance of the year. As I said in my World's End review, I gave his TV title match against Hangman 4. Those were the only 2 singles matches I gave 4 for Moxley. I was not a fan of this Death Rider's heel character at all. As someone that is a fan of Moxley, I just didn't think the work was all that great during this heel run. Partially by design, but partially I just didn't think it worked. But Moxley pivoting back to more of that tweener, which I think is what he's best at, and even leaning in more babyface here, I thought worked really well. This really kept capped Fletcher's year. He has another match even higher than this on the month for me, but I thought this was a tremendous performance. That sleeper suplex that everyone seems to be talking about. One of the nastiest spots of the year. That was awesome. Scary also, but me not watching it live, I knew he was fine. So that didn't make it scary and just made it wincing from the pain and all that stuff. I thought they connected the Okada match because this followed Okada Takeshita very well with the screwdriver spot in this match. That was excellent storytelling. I wish shows did that a little bit more in pro wrestling nowadays, where each match kind of told a story match to match. Obviously, that's not the case throughout the whole match, but I really loved how these two matches tied together and ultimately tied into the finals. I think they did an excellent job. This as a standalone match is great. The stories they told, leading up to this and succeeding this with both the group stage of the Continental Classic and the finals. This was, about as high of a level as pro wrestling can get. I didn't go 5 stars on it because I didn't think it was a perfect match by any means. I wasn't as compelled in like the opening third of this match that I would need to be for a 5 star. Work is very high. I think if I rewatched it, I might go higher than 4.25, but that's not to take away from this match at all. Coming in at number 3, I had the group stage match between Kyle Fletcher and Speedball Mike Bailey. This was Mike Bailey's standout performance in the Continental Classic. This was his biggest win. I thought they told a very fun story here, and this was worked more my speed of what I like and love in pro wrestling, where they worked kind of more of that PWG Dragon Gate speed in this match, which Speedball excels at and Kyle Fletcher can do really well as well. Lots of high impact spots. We got a little finisher spammy towards the end, which I don't love, which is ultimately why this is only 4.25. But I thought everything flowed together really well. I think Speedball won with a roll-up at the end, which would make sense to protect Fletcher, with Fletcher being much higher up the card. But it felt well-earned. Speedball built the momentum, stole the momentum away from Fletcher towards the end, that it felt like he should win it, and then he ultimately did. And I think they did a great job with that, with it not feeling like a cop-out. With a round-robin tournament, you got to have people win and lose throughout it to make the numbers work. And it's not always cohesive and well-earned to do that. I think AEW struggles with that at times. Commander beating Claudio last year on the last day, I thought was really weak. And this match didn't suffer from that at all. Mike Bailey felt like the better wrestler on that night. It felt believable and well-earned that he won. So I thought they did an excellent job here. Coming in at number 2 from All Japan's New Year's Eve show, they had Yuma Anzai challenging for the Triple Crown belt against Kento Miyahara. These are All Japan's 2 best guys going at it, and I thought they really brought it excellently here. Kento is obviously the ace of All Japan. Yuma Anzai is their star young guy here. They worked this really tough. 2 faces, but they both had a bit of an edge. Kento was almost leaning more tweener in this. And he had a little bit of everything. The striking was excellent. That's the story of this match. That's what really pushed this over the top, is they were both kneeing and kicking the shit out of each other. But you had fun crowd brawling as well. I thought the closing sequence was the best part of this. Everything flowed great. You had both guys teasing their finisher, really struggling to hit their finisher, and I think both guys ended up kicking out of the first attempt of it. So that drama just kept building and building. And as that drama was building, the striking got more stiff and more. Every strike felt like it was a knockout. It felt like at any moment the match could end. And then they kept, kicking out and fighting through. And this is just fucking rock. This is I think, it's my number 2 match, though. Feels kind of like an oxymoron to say it's my second most recommended match of the month, but it definitely is. I think this is definitely worth seeking out. All Japan gets very little love, and I think a lot of that's from their own doing in 2025. But this was far and away, I thought, their best match of the year that I've seen. I can't imagine a match was better than this that they put on this year. And this is their best 2 guys. So if you want to check out All Japan at all, this is definitely the best place to start, I think. And coming in at number 1 was the Open the Triangle Gate title defense from Dragon Gate's final show in the year of December 28th, which is the Love and Peace team taking on the former Mochizuki dojo of Daiki, Yanagiuchi, Akira, Sahara, and Ryo Fuda. This match was fucking amazing. It took my breath away. I couldn't believe it was happening. I think the first time this has ever happened to me is the finishing sequence here. The ref counted 3, and I sat up and rewound this match and restarted it from its entirety and just rewatched it as an encore. These 6 guys I never expected to be at the top of my list in any rankings. I like all three of the 11-piece guys a lot. Mochizuki Jr., it took me a long time to kind of get the hype. I finally get it. Hyo, I feel like I'm higher on than a lot of people, but he's just not this kind of guy typically. And Ben K is obviously former Dreamgate champion. He can reach this height. He's the guy that's least surprising here. And then you had the three Mochizuki Dojo guys that kind of just felt like they were floundering. Fuda, I think, is kind of the most well-built to have a good career, but he's also the least exciting. He finally kind of broke through and had his Bravegate match earlier in this year. Sahara is the guy with the heavyweight potential. I think he's come the least personally of the three, but his flashes are the highest level. And Yanagiuchi is my favorite, but he's too small to really ever do anything, even Dragon Gate. He got his Bravegate title match this year as well, which I thought was excellent. I went 4.25 on that. I think that was back in April. So he's my favorite of the three, and I think was the most capable of having something like this. But overall, I think this was like just a career performance from all six of these guys, especially the former Mochizuki Dojo guys. This was just awesome. I don't really have the words to describe this. They came in guns blazing from the opening bell, and it just kept building and building and getting crazier. You had an extended like Fuda Mochizuki Jr. spot where they were just kicking and beating the shit out of each other. Everyone hit their high spots excellently. Everyone had their moments to shine in this match. I don't think they botched a single thing in this match. Everything was high impact. It was incredible. I think this match potentially is going to make my top 10 matches of the year. This was fucking phenomenal. I think this is something you guys have to check out, especially from the characters that are in this. You might never see a match this good from the rest of these guys in their careers again. I think Dragon Gate's work rate's really good, so I wouldn't be shocked. But I was very shocked that this happened, especially at this point in this year. The match build for this came out of nowhere. They just kind of came out after the Triangle Gate tournament was decided. It felt a little unearned. It felt like it didn't deserve to be a semi-main event, and then it was one of the best matches in Dragon Gate all year. I'm still kind of at a loss for words from this about a week after watching this, and I want to watch it again for a third time. It was just that good. All right, so that wraps up December, and then I wanted to talk quickly about my plans for the channel here going forward. So the end of the year voting season has kind of started here. Everyone's getting stuff together. I want to do a top 100 wrestlers for Violent People. I want to do top 10 matches for Voices of Wrestling. I'm hoping to get entered on both of those, and I'll run those down on this channel as well. I think I'm going to use my top 100 wrestlers, counting from 100 to 1, over the course of maybe 3-4 videos. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, and I'm going to use that to build into the top 10 matches of the year. I'm starting a rewatch of everything I did 4.5 and above that I haven't watched at least for a second time. Let me glance at that quick while I got you guys here. So that is, it looks like 21 matches altogether that are 4.5 or higher on the year, but I've probably watched 6 or 7 of these twice. So I got to rewatch about 10 to 15 of these to finalize my top 10 and finalize my top 100 wrestlers. But that'll come out as a series, so I'm not going to really watch anything in 2026 until I get this all finalized. So those will be my next couple videos. Be on the lookout for those. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate the support on the year. Happy New Year, and let's have a great 2026. Bye.